Okay, now we hear something from the room. Oh, great. Okay, so maybe now I can start the session.
Hello, Kazui. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you well.
Okay, so people are still coming into the room a little bit. It's a little bit noisy still, but we will be starting in about a minute.
Okay. So I think it's going to be the team in the room who is playing the Victor's recording.
Yes, that's correct.
And I hope they are ready.
Okay, almost everybody's here. So yeah, in a few seconds, I will hand it over to you when the room will be quiet. And then you can introduce the speaker, and we will be playing the video from here.
Okay, great.
Helena, was that you?
Okay, good morning again. Welcome back. Please take your seats. We are going to start the next session, and Kazui Saku will be chairing that session. We have a few online speakers. Kazui is online as well, so we will get a picture showing up in a minute, in a second, I think, if the team in the back can help us do that.
All right, so I'd like to start the next session. My name is Kazui Sako from Waseda University. I'm going to be the last session chairing remotely, so I hope that goes well. The next session is titled Threshold Cryptography. We have two speakers speaking to you online. And then the first speaker is Victor Shoup, entitled A Threshold ECDSA Protocol, its design and implementation. And please have the video rolling.
Hi, I'm Victor Shoup from Dfinity, and today I'm going to talk to you about a new threshold ECDSA signing protocol. Let me start by giving you some context about Dfinity and the Internet Computer. So the Internet Computer is a distributed platform for secure execution of smart contracts, which has been developed by Dfinity. And the Internet Computer provides excellent scalability and a complete protocol stack for distributed applications, so providing everything from the front end to the back end for distributed applications. We're currently implementing a new threshold ECDSA signing protocol. And this protocol is being integrated into the architecture of the Internet Computer. By doing this, we'll enable smart contracts running on the Internet Computer to securely hold and spend Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. This talk is based actually on two papers. The first by Jens Groth and myself, which has been on ePrint for a little while now, and the second also by Jens Groth and myself, which we're finishing up now and should be available on ePrint very soon. Let me start by reviewing ECDSA signatures. So the EC in ECDSA stands for elliptic curve. So we have an elliptic curve of some prime order Q with a generator G. The secret key is a random number mod Q, and the public key is just the secret key times the generator. And I'll be using additive group notation here. To sign a message M, we first hash it. Then we compute a random number mod Q, multiply that random number times the generator G to get this point R on the elliptic curve. And then we apply this funny conversion function. So the conversion function is a very peculiar map that maps points on the curve to numbers mod Q. And I won't go into the details of that. It's not really important for this talk. So once we've computed this group element R and applied the conversion function to it, we do a little check here to rule out some corner cases that can only happen with actually negligible probability. And then after we've done that, we compute the number S mod Q, which is R inverse times H plus TD. H is the hash of the message. T is the output of this conversion function, D is the secret key. And so the signature is this pair ST. And both of these numbers will actually be non-zero mod Q. Given a pair of non-zero values mod Q, S and T, we verify that it's a signature on M as follows. First, we hash the message, and then we compute the group element R as S inverse times H plus times the generator plus S inverse times D times, S inverse times T times the public key. And then once we have this group element, we check that it's not the zero group element, and then we apply the conversion function to that and make sure that we get back the value T in the signature. Going forward, I'm going to keep up here in the corner a copy of kind of the verification equation to help you kind of remember how ECDSA signatures work. I'm going to talk about two techniques that are useful in the context of threshold ECDSA implementations. The first technique I'll call precomputation. So you'll notice that in computing a signature, we carry out these steps which actually don't depend on the message M at all. So we can actually pre-compute these values. And in fact, this group element R is called, I'll call it a pre-signature. Now, having computed a pre-signature, along with some other pre-computed shared values, we can actually make the signing process very efficient. So suppose we've pre-computed these values. So and we've published the value, the group element R, and we also have shared among the parties running the protocol these values. So we have little r, which is this value here, and then we have a sharing of a brand new random number u. Then we also need a sharing of r prime, which is r times u, and a sharing of a value d prime, which is just d times u. Remember that d is the secret key. Once we have all this pre-computed data, then the process of signing a message is very easy. So given the message M that we wish to sign, we just have to do the following local computation. First, we hash the message to get H, and then because we perform the following linear computation, which is very easy to do for most secret sharing schemes. So we just take the hash H multiplied by our share of U, and we take the value T, which we pre-computed up here, and multiply it by our share of D prime here, and let's call that V. So each party now has a share of V. And then what the parties do is they open up the sharings of V and R prime, and from which they obtain the values V and R prime. And then everyone can just compute V divided by R prime. If you plug in, you see that V, which was computed this way, in the numerator, we get HU plus TDU. And the numerator, well, R prime was just R times U. And then we can cancel out the U, and we just get H plus TD in the numerator and R in the denominator, which is actually exactly the value we need to compute an ECDSA signature. So the point of all this is that given this pre-signature and given these pre-computed sharings, the latency for a signature is really just one communication round. That's the cost of this open operation, which for typical threshold implementations will just be a matter of broadcasting. Everybody broadcasts the value, everybody collects shares from everybody else, and then everybody can compute these values and then compute the signature. A second technique that's important for threshold ECDSA and also for in other contexts as well is something I'll call additive key derivation. So the idea is this. We have the secret key, and we're going to replace it by the secret key plus E. And the public key will be analogously replaced by the original public key, big D, plus E times the generator. So here, this E, I'll call it the additive tweak. So it's a number mod Q, and it's derived by hashing some public identifier that's used to identify a particular public key. So we can take a public identifier, hash it in some way to get the tweak, and then apply this key derivation to get secret keys and public keys. An important special case of this is BIP32. So BIP32 is a standard that's widely used in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies to implement so-called hierarchical deterministic wallets. And it's really just a special case of this where a very peculiar and particular hashing process is used to derive these additive tweaks. Now, additive key derivation itself is useful in various contexts, but also in a threshold implementation is particularly useful. And let me explain why. First of all, I'll point out that it's easy to efficiently implement it because of the linearity of the key derivation. So it really doesn't add any extra cost. But why do we want it in a threshold implementation? Well, the reason is it allows us to keep the cost of maintaining signing keys to a minimum. And let me explain what I mean by that. So for each signing key that we want to maintain, it's going to have to be shared among all the parties running the protocol. And moreover, we're going to have to reshare this key using an interactive resharing protocol whenever we need to change the membership of the network running the protocol, or even if we're going to like regularly, proactively refresh the shares of the signing key. So we're going to have to do real work at regular intervals for each and every signing key. And if we're going to have thousands and thousands of signing keys, which we foresee happening on the internet computer, this will be doing this. These maintenance costs will be too much. Also, we may want to have a separate mechanism for backing up these signing keys, which again will add to the key maintenance costs. So the idea is that we can use additive key derivation to use just one master key from which we can derive many different signing keys. So each, on the internet computer, each smart contract will have its own signing key, but that signing key will be derived from a single master signing key using additive key derivation. So that'll help us keep the key maintenance cost to an absolute minimum. So when we do additive key derivation, our verification equation changes, right? So here, the public key is going to be replaced as in here. So we plug that into here, and you see we get a new verification equation, which looks like this. So on the following slides, I'll keep this equation up here. So let me say a few words about the security of ECDSA. So if we're talking about a threshold ECDSA signing protocol, typically in a well-designed protocol, we'll be able to prove a theorem that says that if ECDSA itself in the non-threshold setting is secure, then our threshold protocol is secure. Hopefully we can prove a theorem like that. But if we're going to use pre-signatures and or additive key derivation, and I'll write AKD in place of additive key derivation, we'll need to adjust the attack game accordingly. So let me talk a little bit about what's previously known about the security of ECDSA with these pre-signatures and AKD variations. So first of all, for ECDSA itself, about 20 years ago, it was proved by Brown to be secure in the generic group model. That's kind of the best thing we have really for ECDSA. And it's proved secure in the generic group model under concrete assumptions on the hash function, so collision resistance and random pre-image resistance. There are other ways of analyzing ECDSA, but I'll focus on the generic group analysis. In terms of ECDSA with pre-signatures, well, even though this idea has been tossed around a lot, there's only been one recent work that actually did an actual proof of this. They proved it in this paper. A proof was given that showed that ECDSA with pre-signatures in the generic group model plus the random oracle model, modeling the hash function as a random oracle, we also get security in this setting with ECDSA and pre-signatures. Now, in terms of ECDSA and additive key derivation, surprisingly, even though BIP32 is a very important and widely used standard, there are actually no general results that were known about ECDSA with additive key derivation. There were some results that applied to various restrictions on the attack model, but none that applied in full generality. And even worse than that, since we want to actually use Ecdsa with both pre-signatures to keep the latency of the online signing down and additive key derivation to keep the cost of key maintenance down, there's never been any papers that have looked at this particular combination, even though there have been other papers in the literature that have suggested this mode of operation. There's been no analysis done. So let me talk a little bit about Ecdsa with pre-signatures plus additive key derivation together. And let me show you a little attack, which is interesting, perhaps. So here's the attack. The attacker makes one pre-signature query, so he gets one pre-signature R, and of course then he can apply the conversion function of that to get the value T. And then our attacker has to find four values: M, a message M, a tweak E, a message M star, and a tweak E star. And they have to satisfy this particular equation, subject to the constraint that the two tweaks are not equal. And here, H and H star are the outputs of the hash function. And the messages M may or may not be equal. Once the attacker has found values satisfying this equation, then the attacker will ask for a signature. He'll get a signature ST using this particular pre-signature on the message M and the tweak E. So what does this give the attacker? Well, we know from the verification equation up here, right, that we have this, the signature satisfies this equation, but also because we have this identity, we also get this. So that means that the signature ST happens to be a valid signature on the message M star with respect to the tweak E star. So that's a forgery. Now, what about step two? This is obviously the hardest step here to implement. We have to find these values satisfying this equation. And if you think about it for a little bit, this is essentially what's called a four-sum problem, which is a problem that's been studied quite intensively over the years. And there's a very famous algorithm due to Wagner who gives an algorithm for this four-sum problem. When we apply it in this setting, what we'll get is an attack that takes time cube root of the group order. And contrast this with the square root of the group order time that it would take to attack Ecdsa generically. So while this attack isn't a sub-exponential time attack, it's still very much not a feature we would like to have in our protocol. So since this is a rather undesirable feature, let's talk about mitigations. So in our paper, what we do is we suggest a couple of different approaches to mitigating against these types of attacks. So the first mitigation we call re-randomized pre-signature. So here we start out just as before with what I'll call a base pre-signature. So it's computed just as before. But then when a signing request comes in, right at the last minute, after the signing request comes in, we're going to replace our base pre-signature by a randomized version of it. So we're going to add in delta times G, where delta is a random public value, or a pseudo-random value. It's public, so it doesn't need to be secret shared or anything. And it's important that it's only revealed after the message and that's going to be signed has been given. So let me say a couple of things about how this impacts the threshold implementation. First of all, it's easy to efficiently implement due to linearity. Second, you might note that this could possibly introduce some additional latency. However, it turns out that on the internet computer and most likely in a number of other similar type of architectures, it won't introduce any additional latency. And this is simply because by the time the signing request passes through consensus, we can actually generate this delta value already. So there's actually no latency penalty for that. So that's one mitigation. A second mitigation we discussed in our paper, we call it homogeneous key derivation. So the way this works is as follows. The secret key, we'll call it the master secret key here, instead of just having instead of having one random number mod q, we have a pair of random numbers mod q. And the master public key is also a pair of group elements, D times G and D prime times G. Then for a tweak E, what we're going to do is derive the secret key as D plus E times D prime. So for ordinary additive key derivation, we just had this, right? So now we're going to have D plus E times D prime. And we can still compute the derived public key from the master public key and the tweak by that formula there. So one disadvantage of this approach is that it's not compatible with BIP32. And mainly because of that, we didn't implement this on the internet computer, even though we could have. Both of these mitigations individually prevent that for some type of attack, and you can, and we prove theorems that give quantitative security bounds for these. And in fact, you can combine them to get even stronger concrete security bounds. And in fact, in our paper, in this paper, we actually analyzed Ecdsa and all these different variants. There's actually 9 of them, where we look at Ecdsa with and without additive key derivation, with no pre-signatures, with pre-signatures, with re-randomized pre-signatures, with homogeneous key derivation, all these different combinations. It turns out there's like 9 of them altogether, and we prove security properties with concrete security bounds in the generic group model for each variation under concrete assumptions for the hash function. So this is supposed to be a talk about threshold Ecdsa protocol. So let me say a few words about the protocol that we designed. Like I said, our paper, this is the second paper I mentioned early on in the talk. We're in the process of releasing it now. It should be ready soon. But let me just highlight for you a few of the high-level features of our protocol. First of all, it works in an asynchronous communication model. So we don't we don't have any assumption about how long it takes to deliver messages between parties. Secondly, it works with Byzantine corruptions, and in the asynchronous model, it achieves kind of optimal resilience in that it withstands up to n/3 Byzantine corruptions. Also importantly, it provides guaranteed output to delivery, which means that to the extent that messages are actually delivered among parties, signatures will be output. You can't stop it. It also provides a very efficient online signing phase. So as I already suggested, we can pre-compute pre-signatures and we can pre-compute sharings. And once you've done this, assuming you have the necessary pre-computed data on hand, processing a signing request takes just 1 round of communication. It also supports BIP32 style additive key derivation. So some other properties that our protocol satisfies is that it uses re-randomized pre-signatures plus additive key derivation. So the idea here is that every smart contract on the internet computer effectively gets its own signing key via additive key derivation. To get a reasonably efficient protocol, we developed a new asynchronous verifiable secret sharing scheme, which may be of independent interest. It also relies on the internet computer's consensus mechanism. So even though we assume a completely asynchronous communication model, we do make use of the internet computer's consensus protocol, which itself does rely on some specific limited partial synchrony assumptions, but those are a part of the consensus mechanism and not a part of our threshold Ecdsa protocol. And in fact, you could substitute in any consensus protocol that you like. It also relies on the internet computer's random beacon to implement re-randomized pre-signatures, which itself relies on an implementation of threshold BLS signatures that were already implemented on the internet computer. Let me close by just comparing our protocol with some other recently published protocols. So as you are certainly aware of, there's been a flurry of threshold Ecdsa protocols in the past few years. Mainly because of the interest in the application of Ecdsa to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Essentially, all of these protocols in the recent literature assume synchrony, and they are not at all fault tolerant, which simply means that in many, if not all of these protocols, if a single node in the network crashes, then you will get no signatures out. So neither of these properties are compatible with the internet computer. In terms of synchronous communication, well, I personally find it to be a completely unrealistic assumption for a globally distributed network where asynchronous communication model is the most natural model. If you're going to use a synchrony assumption, you're going to have to make extremely pessimistic and impractical timeouts to make that work. And I just don't see how that's really doable. Maybe somebody can explain it to me. Also, for the internet computer, fault tolerance is essential. Our smart contracts have to be unstoppable, even if a small handful even if some of the parties running the protocol are temporarily crashed, we need to be able to generate signatures. So now I'm really at the end of my talk. I'd like to thank you for your attention. And I'd also like to encourage anyone who's interested to look into joining us at DFINITY. We're hiring and we're looking for good people who want to work at the intersection of theory and practice. So even though I wasn't able to come in real life to RWC, my colleague Jens Groth is there in person, and he'd be happy to talk with anyone who's interested with opportunities and also to answer any questions you might have about our protocols. Thank you very much.
Okay, unfortunately, Victor is not with us to take questions. So I was not sure if Jens is willing to take his questions, or
I think,
Okay.
Kazui, perhaps we should move on because we're running out of time and a bit behind schedule already.
Okay, all right. Okay,
I propose we move on, and we will have interested folks with questions talk to Jens during the break at some point. Thank you.
Or use Zulip chat so he can come back and later. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Tal. She will be talking about another threshold cryptography and threshold cryptography as a service. Okay, floor is yours, Tal.
Thank you. Now you'll see my technical challenges, but let's hope I get everything going.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to be talking
Can you
about
put it in presentation mode?
It is in presentation mode.
You're not sharing that part.
What do you see?
We see the list of slides on the left. Yeah, click that button.
I did, and I see it in presentation mode. You do not?
Huh, okay.
Do you?
No, it's not in presentation mode. You'll have to reshare.
Okay. Peter, maybe you can share the slides, and would I be able to see them?
That would be our AV team in the back, if they are able to share.
Okay. Let me try one more time.
Try sharing your whole screen.
Okay, I'll do that. Now, do you see? Do you see now?
No, I
Not
see
yet.
only black.
Can the slides be shared in the room somehow?
I think we're trying.
Okay, I'll try again to share
I
here.
see a lot of activity in the back of the room.
Every
lot
time
of,
I share, it crashes my Zoom.
So we see them, but they're not in presentation mode. I think
Yeah,
if
I
that's
see.
the best we can get, then we should maybe
Okay,
use
Okay.
this.
okay. It's going to be an issue further down, but let's go with that. Okay. So, okay, I'll start with you see the slides not in presentation, yeah? Okay, so this is a talk about threshold cryptography as a service, and I wanted to draw everyone's attention to the fact that it's now 5:20 for me. So any mistakes that I make, please take it into account that I've been up waiting for this talk. Cryptography, this is sort of an explanation of the title. Cryptography deals with secret keys in many of its applications. And threshold cryptography deals with taking these keys and breaking them up. Here there's supposed to be animation that shows that the secret key is broken into, I gave here as an example, 4 shares of the key. And the idea and the reason behind why we want to carry out this sharing is because it provides enhanced security for the secret key. It eliminates the single point of failure. And also, when you're doing things in a threshold manner, then it also enables increased availability because you can, let's say, assume that only a subset of these subkeys are needed in order to carry out the computation. And why do we want to offer threshold cryptography as a service? There are many, many applications that need it. Certification authorities, distributed storage want to sign all kinds of things. And really, as Victor also said in his previous talk, the reason that there's interest now in threshold ECDSA and threshold for other things as well is because their need to store these keys that hold a lot of money and a lot of value in them, and you want to sign in a distributed manner while providing more security to the key. So we are going to be providing threshold cryptography as a service in 2 models. One model is a dedicated server model, which means that we have some set of known servers and servers that are going to be conducting these threshold operations. And the second model is a newer model, which is an ad hoc framework, which means that servers could be coming in and out of this computation of the threshold computation. And we will discuss both these things here. I'll touch upon them both. So just to show a basic building block that is needed in these threshold computations, it's called a multi-dealer VSS. VSS being verifiable secret sharing. For those who don't know what verifiable secret sharing is, basically there is some dealer D. You can see here at the bottom sort of an explanation what VSS is. There is a dealer D. It has some input S. And a VSS protocol is comprised of 2 protocols, a share protocol and a recover protocol. In the sharing phase, the dealer takes his secret S and sort of splits it amongst the parties. This looks reminiscent of what I had showed before of the secret key being distributed, and really these keys most times are distributed via such a protocol as VSS. And a reconstruction protocol enables you later, if you want to do so, to reconstruct the value. In threshold cryptography, most times we don't utilize the reconstruction protocol because we want to keep the keys in its distributed form. So what would be a multi-dealer VSS? Basically, you'd have n dealers, and each one executes the VSS protocol. Here I'm specifying specifically a Pedersen protocol, and it shares its value SI. And what we would want in this multi-dealer VSS, it's not to have these SIs kept separately, but really we want to compute some function of these SIs. Let's say the sum of the SIs. A sum is a very good function, for example, for creating randomness. So if everybody shares a random SI and then we sum it, we have some collective S, which is random, which is very good for key generation. Okay, so what do we want to do for threshold crypto as a service in the dedicated server model? It's a classical model. If you in multi-party computations, we always assume that we know the servers that are computing. But here, what we want to do, because Victor also mentioned it, we'd want to be signing many, many times. We'd need a lot of keys. We'd need a lot of randomness. Many things are going to be needed a lot, especially in this, let's say, blockchain implementation. So we have many servers, maybe more than 3 or 4, which is usually assumed in these multi-party computations. And we'd have many secrets, 100,000, 1,000,000. So one, of course, straightforward solution would be to implement, let's say, this VSS, multi-dealer sharing that I had shown before, and just run it many times for every secret, let's say, that you want to share. But this does not deliver desired runtimes. In fact, when we started off doing this, we did think we could do it, and we implemented it in sort of the naive way of doing it, and really it could barely run. So to facilitate this thing, what we want to do is we want to do a multi-dealer, multi-secret VSS. And we call this thing multi-VSS for short. We deleted the dealer in the multi-secret. This should have been very nice in the with animation, but of course you can't see it now. And the idea basically is you can think about this many dealers as being on the x-axis, the many secrets being on the y-axis, and the shareholders who need to receive the secrets being on the z-axis. And you can think about it as this three-dimensional box of shares of values of all the secrets from all the dealers. And what basically we do is we use all kinds of techniques to amortize all the checks that need to be carried out in these protocols, and we combine them together, sort of in the same way that batch signature verification can have, or batching of verifiable secret sharing. These things, these techniques are embedded into our solutions and really deliver the results that we need. Okay, this building block, sort of this matrix that we use for all these sharings, can be used in this original setting that we have when I said that there's these dedicated servers who compute the threshold functionalities that we need, but they also are needed as a building block in this ad hoc server model. And what is this ad hoc server model, and why do we even want it and need it if we can do these things with the dedicated servers? So when we're talking about systems, in blockchain systems that are doing computing blocks or doing all kinds of things, or we really are thinking about million parties. N, now I turned it into a capital N, is millions of parties. And we cannot compute these functions that I had told you before, even this box, because computations in these protocols are at a minimum n square. When you're talking about millions of servers, this becomes completely impractical. So what do you want to do in order to deliver these threshold results? You want to say, I'll take a little n, which is much smaller than the big N, let's say 1,000 parties. And I'll compute only over these 1,000 parties. So even if I have n squared or even n cubed, I can still run these computations. But what is the problem in this setting? In all these systems, we have an assumption that some of these parties can be faulty. There's some subset of parties that we allow the attacker to get control over and impact the computation. And many times in these protocols, we assume that the attacker can control up to 1/3 of the parties, okay? So think about it. If big N is 1,000,000, the adversary can control 300,000. Then if we take a small committee to run the computation, if little n is about 1,000, then we're in big trouble because potentially the attacker can corrupt all these parties and no computations will proceed. Victor touched upon this before and he said, we need our system to continue running even in the presence of malicious behavior. So what do we do? I mean, how do we get out of this problem? So now we go to the Yoso model. I'll move this. Oh, I can do the animation live. Okay, so how did this Yoso model, which I'm going to explain what it is, get started? It really was a progression from Nakamoto to Jing-Mikali and then the Yoso model. What did Nakamoto show us? Nakamoto showed us that we can compute a function in a leader election. It's a function that requires no interaction and has no inputs. And how is it achieved? By proof of work. A party sits locally and computes. It's not telling anybody that it's computing. It's not telling anybody how it's advancing. And the minute that it solves the puzzle for the Bitcoin case, it announces I'm the leader and shows the proof by providing the proof to the puzzle. And then it provides the block. So in fact, it speaks only once it comes and declares what the block is. So this was the first instance where we see that a party in some sense cannot be corrupted because the attacker doesn't know that this is going to be the party that's going to be providing the block because the attacker sees nothing. Jing and Mikali took it a step forward because in the proof of stake blockchain of Algorand, they wanted to do Byzantine agreement to ensure finality. So what did they say? We want to do a Byzantine agreement, but we can't take the 1,000 people to run the Byzantine agreement because the Byzantine agreement protocol has interaction. Once they speak for the first time, the attacker could potentially, adversary, take control of these parties and foil the Byzantine agreement. So what they said is, we will design a protocol that does have interaction, does not have secret inputs, but we will be able to run each protocol by a fresh set of parties. And they introduced this player replaceability model. Every step of the protocol is conducted by a new set, which self-elects itself, the same way that in the Nakamoto protocol, the proposer of the block self-elects itself by computing the proof of work. In the Jing-Mikali, The self-nominations happens via a verifiable random function, which can be computed very fast, does not require a lot of computation. You can prove that you are, in fact, in this committee that now has to speak. And one step is executed for the protocol. That committee dissolves and a new committee comes into place. So we've had now in advance, we had first a protocol with no interaction and no inputs, to a protocol that has interaction but no secret inputs. And now we need to take it to the next step, because we want to deal with generation of secret randomness, of keying materials, and so on. We cannot have a protocol that has no secrecy in it. And for this, we introduced the Yoso model, which is you only speak once. And once I say this, Yoso, and you only speak once, you'll never forget this model. Yoso, Yoso, Yoso. So what does the Yoso protocol? It takes the Jigmikali protocol model to the next level. It says we will have protocols with interaction and with secret inputs. And even under this, the fact that there are secret inputs, we will be able to compute any function with player replaceability. And think about it, it's quite surprising that this thing in fact can happen, because if I have secret information and I'm on on the first committee, let's say, how can somebody on a new committee compute if they need my secret information as well? But still, we can provide protocols that compute this in general. The Yoso paper, the original Yoso paper, in fact, this is the Yoso paper, provides this theorems that say we can compute anything. But in this paper, which I'm presenting here, we really wanted to be able to show that things can be done efficiently and not just theoretical results. So, as I said, it's very hard to design protocols in the Yoso model, because protocols inherently are, many of the most protocols are interactive, and parties need to speak more than once. And as I said again, and I want to repeat it, the servers in these computations hold information that has to be secret. Let's say the shares of that key that I had shown at the beginning, that was sort of split into 4 pieces. You cannot transfer that share directly to the next committee that needs to compute, because in that case, eventually, the attacker will learn all the information. So you have to be much more sophisticated in transferring information from the first committee to the second committee.
Al, do you think you can wrap up soon? We are running out of time.
Okay, I will finish quickly. Okay. I'll say what is the issue with these protocols is that because they're interactive, people need to speak in the future. Not only do they have secret information, but also they need to speak in the future. So we introduced the notion, which is called future broadcast, which enables party to take action now and for others to speak on their behalf in the future. And this is a primitive that exists. But there is even a more complex thing. Speaking in the future, if you want to lie, is quite easy. But if you want people to force them to speak the truth in the future, then that is a little bit more challenging, and we bootstrap it on top of the future broadcast. I'm cutting a lot of the details here. And I want to say that we actually implemented this threshold as a service. And for our multi-VSS, we get huge speed ups versus the naive implementation that I mentioned of just doing naive Pedersen. And just to give a few points, if we're with 15 servers and 100 secrets, we get a five-fold increase. And let's say with 513 servers and 100,000 secrets, we can get 50 times speed up. And thank you for your time. Sorry for the technical challenges. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We don't hear the voice from the room, but I'm sure there's a lot of applause. And thank you for your live animation, Tal. Unfortunately, we don't have time to take questions. So if you do have any questions to Tal, you can ask them in the Zulip chat. And I hope, Tal, you can check the Zulip chat. Okay, so this session is now over, and I'd like to hand over to Nigel for the next session.
I will mute them because it's lightning talks. They're not allowed to share slides. If they can share their, we can see them if they want to share. Put the camera on. That's perfectly kind of cool, but no sharing of slides. If we run out of people in internet land, we will divert to Amsterdam land, and we could form another queue. If you're really desperate and you missed your chance yesterday, we can do that. Otherwise, we can just go for lunch early. Anyway, so I am waiting for someone to raise their hand. Is there anyone out there? Kevin, you're on. Go.
I'm going to violate the first.
He gave me power to mute. Can I actually kick him off the thing? Hold on. Stop participant sharing. I can do that as well. Yeah. Now, Kevin, would you actually like to speak without slides?
No.
There we go. Right. Does anyone else want to raise? Do you want to? I'm going to lower your hand now. Right. Anyone else want to raise a hand? Oh, Tanya, you're on. Share your camera and speak.
Yeah, we didn't hear anything, Nigel. So you were on mute and we were not showing, so we don't actually know the instructions.
Ah, you don't know. Oh, so shall I do it? Shall I say again? Does that help? Can you hear me now? Okay, so the instructions are raise your hands, no slides, and share your thing. Show your camera if you so wish. So Tanya, would you like to talk, Tanya?
Yes, in fact, I would like to talk. This time it's a job opening. We don't have it open on the ISTR yet, so it's a pre-announcement, hot, fresh from the press. In Eindhoven, we'll be hiring for a tenure track position. So it's going to be an assistant professor with a development track all the way to associate professor. We're looking for somebody, ideally cryptanalysis, math background. So this is going to be in the math side of the department. And I hope to have it up in like a week or a bit, but you can already contact me if you have questions. Thank you.
Cool, thank you, Tanya. Well done. Oh, we've got someone here who wants to talk. Mohammed, can you show your picture and speak away for a few minutes?
Yeah, sure. So thank you very much. I'm Osama from TU Dresden, and it's also a job advertisement. So if you are interested in topics like provable security, protocol analysis, then we have multiple PhD, research associate, and postdoc positions. Specifically, we look at the attestation protocols for Intel SGX and the next generation of Intel's trusted execution environments, which is called TDX, Trust Domain Extensions. And the prerequisite for applying for this position is that you have to have You have to read like 2 pages of Intel TDX documentation, and if you don't get crazy, you are perfect for this job.
That's a good idea. Maybe other people should adopt that as a way of scanning applicants. Thank you very much. Anyone else there in internet land? No one. Whilst we're waiting, I think we have someone here who wants to come. Come.
Thank you for the opportunity. I was going to do it online, but then you said I could do it from here, so thanks. So my name is Emanuele. I work in the Technology Innovation Institute in Abu Dhabi. I have a double announcement. The first is about a conference. We will hold the conference on cryptology and network security. Also, the acronym is CANS 2022 in November in Abu Dhabi. I think it's, as far as I know, the first time that a crypto conference will reach the country of the United Arab Emirates. So it's a pretty nice occasion for you to visit and to join the conference. The deadline will be at the end of May. Second announcement is that so we are a group of approximately 40-45 cryptographers working in the center. We are hiring for many different teams, ranging from cryptanalysis, post-quantum, fully homomorphic encryption, hardware engineers, etc. So if you want to reach to us, there are 10 of my colleagues here in the conference. Just look for Technology Innovation Institute in the badge. See you. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone else out in internet land? Internet's not very busy these days, is it? It's kind of... Anyway, okay, so we'll take someone else live.
Hey folks, my name is Brent. I work at Avast, and I'm not going to talk about that. There is an Artisan chocolate shop about 2 minutes that direction. They have single source plantation made chocolate. It's a fantastic shop. I highly recommend it. They're only open from noon to 5. So if, like me, you came to Amsterdam hoping for some chocolate, it's that way. Ask me for directions.
Maybe you came to Amsterdam for other things and have found other ways of purchasing what you wanted to find in Amsterdam. Please feel free to come up and give people advice.
Hello, this is Nicholas. So I recently looked at some real-world crypto facts from very old history. So I looked at the list of Enigma rotors from the 1930s and 1940s, and I found that typical Enigma rotors actually used in the real life. They have typically 5 or 10 times less invariant differentials than a randomly generated rotor. So the probability that most of the rotors actually would appear randomly is like winning a lottery. So this is an interesting new discovery.
There are no more raised hands. There's a raised hand. There's a queue here. Yeah, well, sort of. And if you not get there fast, someone's going to beat you.
Hi there, Tobias Heindl. I'm finally dropped out of academia, so that's my confession today for you. And basically, first thing, I'm rewarded with a fantastic conference. So I've joined Anomer and Heliax, same thing, different source. And what made me actually join them is that it was the first project outside academia that was anything interesting. So just in case, let you know, and of course, we are hiring. So have a great time. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Chris. I'm COO and co-founder of Defense. It's a crypto custody SaaS protocol for Web3 apps. We are right now, we have raised $30 million and we're hiring a lot of people. Among those our R&D team will be strengthened by cryptographers, VP of research, etc., etc. We're working on different subjects ranging from leveraging MPCE, threshold cryptography, etc., etc., to shard the key on a peer-to-peer network that is off-chain, broadcasting stuff on-chain, and so there's a bunch of things that happen there that is happening on-chain that we want to take off-chain to increase speed, increase security, and lower costs. There are new features to be, new papers to be thresholdized. We have also crypto agility to take care of in regards to quantum resistant cryptography that we want to deploy as well. So and last but not least, I'm not going to announce it today because that's for later this year, but we are going to decentralize everything progressively. It's going to take a couple of years and more money, but if you want to be part of that designing process and the architecting initiative, happy to discuss that and take you on board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, Michael.
Okay, thanks, Nigel. So I'm Marco Kohlweis. So it's also going to be kind of a hiring pitch. There's a position for a principal architect for applied cryptography on the ISER job page. It's for input-output, so it's the company behind Cardano, special project. So I can't tell you all that much about it. All I can say is it involves a lot of interesting cryptography, zero-knowledge proofs, working with both researchers and engineers. So check it out and get in touch.
Thank you. And this is going to be the final one, because you know what, I'm hungry.
Makes absolute sense. Hi, I'm Anna. It's just an announcement. If you're reviewing cryptography code professionally, security reviewer, cryptography auditor, we're meeting at 1 p.m. upstairs in the administration zal. I'm not sure I pronounced that correctly, but you'll find us 1 p.m. there.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody in Internet land, and thank you, everybody in the audience for those lightning talks. And remember, there are job openings in Leuven. Helena wants to say something.
Yes, thank you. So I have a speaker on Zulip who wants to actually give a 1-minute talk and who can't do it. So I'm going to prolong this session by another minute. Sorry about that. Okay.
Give the talk. Right here. Oh, I can't read. I've got my reading glasses on.
G-Day from Oz, and a special thank you to my proxy speaker. Okay. Just a quick plug for the EU Commission's chat controls legislative debate and open letter to the EU commissioners, which is online and available at chatcontrolsv2.eu. Cheers, Mark.
So, yeah. So if you want to know, if you want to actually read that, you go to the Zulip chat for this session, and you can see what the link is. Okay, cool. Anything else? Right, that's it. Lunch.